with the Law Office of Cooley Schwer in Springfield. Today we're joined by attorney Don McDonald. We're talking about marital property in a divorce. First question, what is marital property in a divorce?
Marital property is the property that's acquired by a couple during their marriage. Separate property is property that was either acquired before the individuals got married, or perhaps it was gifted to one of them or inherited.
Okay, so...
And during a divorce, all of these things have to be divided up and separated, as well as the debts.
Yeah, so there can be a lot of things. So who decides how to divide marital property and who will pay the debts?
Well, it's always best if the couple can decide. And oftentimes they can work that out and they can figure out who's going to take which property and who's going to pay the debts. And if they can't work it out, then a judge will decide.
Okay, so how does a judge decide? I'm sure it can get really difficult at times.
Well, basically, a judge can determine and divide property however he deems it to be fair and equitable, even if it was separate property. But sometimes that can get fuzzy, because if the parties commingled their assets and mixed them up, for example, if one party owned a house and then later on the other spouse was making the mortgage payments or made significant improvements, suddenly it becomes a little murky as to whether that's actually separate property or a marital asset. So a judge can determine whatever he deems to be appropriate. Usually they will award the separate property to the spouse who owned it before the divorce, but not always.
Okay, now what if the couple had a premarital agreement?
If there was a premarital agreement, it's much easier, because usually those will state how the property should be divided and who gets what, so that becomes a bit easier. But if there isn't a premarital agreement, then the judge will have to determine, and the parties might have to hire an accountant or financial analysts or actuaries in order to assist the judge in determining the value of the assets.
And hopefully the couple can decide it without having to get into too much of that nitty-gritty.
That's always better.
That's always the goal, exactly. Well, thanks so much for this information. Nice to have you here, Attorney Don McDonald. For more information, you can call 413-781-0750 or visit CooleySchwer.com.